When the United States Navy ordered the first prototype of the Curtiss SB2C Helldiver, the plans for the new dive bomber represented a giant leap in technology. Developed by Curtiss-Wright during World War II, the third member of a dive bomber family eventually had so many problems during development that it was even investigated by the Truman Committee and nearly ruined Curtiss as a company. The SB2C quickly earned a questionable reputation for being a dangerous aircraft and became the last dive bomber in the Navy's inventory, but also its most heavily produced. The Helldivers. Dive bombing consists of diving directly towards a target to provide greater shooting accuracy and was first used by Marine Aviator Lieutenant Lawson H.M. Sanderson during operations in Haiti in 1919. Up until then, bomber aircraft dropped their payloads from a level altitude. By 1928, the Navy officially adopted dive bombing as a part of its operational repertoire. The Curtiss-Wright company then developed the Helldivers, an aircraft line designed for the U.S. Navy with dive bombing capabilities. Their hyperbolic nickname originated with the pilots who first developed the technique and became famous while performing in air shows throughout the 1930s. The first ever dive bomber was the F-8C, a Marine variant of the Curtiss-Wright Falcon series of two-seat fighter bombers, added with a 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1340 engine. In 1934, German flying ace Ernst Udet was impressed by the demonstrations and persuaded his country's air ministry to purchase 2 models for Luftwaffe evaluation. This research eventually turned into the development of the infamous Junkers Ju-87 Stuka. Curtiss's second Helldiver was built off the XF-12C, a parasol two-seat fighter monoplane that first flew in early 1933. This Helldiver was delivered in 1937 and became the last military biplane built for the Navy. However, it was obsolete by the time World War II began and never saw Axis combat. The Navy ordered the first prototype of a Curtiss Helldiver on May 15, 1939. This third iteration was identified as SB2C and would serve as a replacement for the Douglas SBD Dauntless. Its technology was expected to represent a giant leap into the future. Prototype. At the time of the request, Curtiss-Wright was producing P-40 Warhawks for the Army Air Forces and P-36 Hawks for exportation, and their factories were working at their utmost capacity. The company then decided to take their latest Helldiver design and build it in a new cattle barn near the Ohio State University fairgrounds. The first version of the SB2C Helldiver, the XSB2C-1, was 36 feet and 9 inches long, with a wingspan of almost 50 feet. The aircraft was a two-seat monoplane with folding wings to facilitate storage on board a carrier, and it had a single 1,500 horsepower Wright R2600 Cyclone radial engine. From its inception, the aircraft was designed as a successor of the Navy's current dive bombers, the Douglas SBD Dauntless, the Vought SB2U Vindicator, and Curtiss's own SBC. The first prototype arrived in Curtiss's plant in Buffalo, New York, in December of 1940, and World War II had already begun. However, even before the prototype took to the air, the SB2C was already showing signs of trouble, as the aircraft suffered from teething problems connected to its engine and 3-bladed propeller, in addition to overall structural handling and stall weaknesses. More trouble. The prototype made its maiden flight on December 18, 1940, and not even 2 months had passed before the aircraft crashed because of engine failure. When Curtiss-Wright was asked to rebuild the prototype, the team lengthened the fuselage, added a larger tail, and installed an autopilot to help with its poor stability. However, the revised prototype was destroyed during a diving test on December 21, 1941. The Navy would have probably canceled the SB2C project under normal circumstances. However, Japan had just attacked Pearl Harbor, and the United States was now officially involved in the conflict. Curtiss-Wright was allowed to continue with the SB2C's development, trusting that they would perfect the new dive bomber with all their experience. The company then hired the necessary workforce, allocated all materials to the new factory, and reached numerous contractors to produce the Helldivers by the thousands. The SB2C would then go through 880 alterations before the Navy was satisfied with the model. Many of the changes were demanded in response to European combat data like self-fueling tanks and extra armor protection. They also required that the aircraft be fitted with twin fuselage-mounted machine guns, replaced by a pair of wing-mounted 20mm cannons. However, most design changes sought to alleviate the aircraft's disappointing handling characteristics. The alterations raised the SB2C's empty weight by 42%, and the inevitable result of all that extra bulk was a deterioration in the vehicle's performance. it took Curtiss-Wright an excessive amount of time to finally get the SB2C into service. By June of 1942, the third dive bomber model became the first instance in which the Navy officially adopted its evocative Helldiver title. Introduction to battle. On November 11, 1943, almost 3 years after the prototype's first flight, the Helldiver was sent into its first combat mission, along with the bombing squadron VB-17 from the carrier USS Bunker Hill. Comparatively, the Grumman TBF Avenger torpedo bomber, the Helldiver's direct competition, had already gone into action at the Battle of Midway 6 months after the SB2C prototype's first flight. The Helldiver could carry a single 1,600-pound bomb in its internal bomb bay, plus 200-pound bombs under its wings. The aircraft had a top speed of 281 miles per hour, a maximum range of 1,100 miles, and a 276-mile combat radius. In comparison, the SBD Dauntless carried the same payload, but had a top speed of 253 miles per hour, a maximum range of 1,100 miles, and a combat radius of 285 miles. Moreover, the SBD had the lowest combat loss ratio of any U.S. Navy aircraft until then. It earned its pristine reputation during some of the early war's most important battles, like the Coral Sea, Midway, Eastern Solomons, Guadalcanal, and Santa Cruz. The Helldiver's debut in combat was underwhelming. Even though the aircraft had been designed to exceed all of the SBD's performance parameters, it didn't meet the expectations. The VB-17's lieutenant commander, James Vos, even said that if he was given a choice, he would choose the SBD over the Helldiver any time. It wouldn't be easy for the Navy's best pilots to relinquish an aircraft that had earned their trust during critical times. 46 lost Helldivers. In 1944, Curtiss introduced a revised variant of the Helldiver. This model had a more powerful engine and a 4-blade propeller. The aircraft's fortune suddenly began to improve. However, during the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June, Admiral Mark Mitcher launched a strike force against Japanese carriers with a workforce that included 51 Helldivers. The entire strike was launched at an extreme range, and the distance critically affected the aircraft's performance due to their low fuel load. Only 5 Helldivers returned and landed safely on the carriers, while only 2 SBD Dauntlesses were lost. The fateful incident highlighted the aircraft's weaknesses and sealed its fate forever. Remainder of service. The Helldivers continued to serve in battles alongside the Grumman TBF Avengers for the remainder of the war. The aircraft was instrumental during the sinking of 2 of the largest Japanese warships, the Musashi battleship on October 24, 1944 during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, and her sister vessel Yamato during the Okinawa campaign on April 7, 1945. The SB2C also supported ground troops and Marines during the Pacific Island hopping campaign, and in patrols during the period between the atomic bombings and the Japanese surrender. However, by October of 1944, the Grumman F-6F Hellcat and the Vought F-4U Corsair were already proving to be more reliable than the Helldiver. High-velocity aircraft rockets that enabled pilots to accurately hit surface targets without subjecting themselves and their aircraft to the stress and danger of a power dive were also factors in the SB2C's demise. The Helldivers was subsequently mounted with 8 5-inch rockets beneath their wings, and the Chief of Naval Operations announced that all Navy combat aircraft would be fitted with missiles on May 18, 1944. However, this same type of missile could be carried by more reliable aircraft like the SBD Dauntless. Legacy. The 5th and final Helldiver variant was introduced in early 1945 and continued to serve through the remainder of the war. However, the importance of dive bombers quickly declined after the conflict ended. By then, the U.S. armed forces were in a state of alert against its current enemy, the Soviet Union, and the government sought to prioritize anti-submarine warfare. Meanwhile, Curtiss-Wright's reputation severely dwindled after a string of failed products during World War II. These included the C-46 Commando transport, which was prematurely introduced into service, and the promising P-40 Warhawk, which was quickly overshadowed by newer models. Still, the Curtiss SB2C Helldiver became the most produced dive bomber in history, totaling 7,140. After the war, the surplus aircraft were sold to the international naval forces of Italy, France, Greece, Portugal, and Thailand. And although it is undeniable that Helldiver squadrons contributed to the Allied victory in the Pacific, the SB2C would eventually earn the nickname of Son of a Bitch Second Class due to its indisputable reputation. Thank you for watching our Dark Skies channel. Don't forget to like our video and hit the bell icon to be notified of all our newest content. And let us know in the comments below what you think of the dive bomber technology and its overall influence.